Previously on Supa-Saturday's Draw Along.
That's why I love to draw, and I wanna create Supa-Saturday, 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 draw along.
What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in once again to Supa-Saturday's Draw Along with me, Jerome Hinds. You saw from the recap there, the construction of Lady Sif. For those of you who are familiar with the mighty Thor, Lady Sif comes from the pages of, I would say, quite vintage Thor. I'm not sure what she's been doing in recent years, but she was one of my favorite side characters. So we've done quite a few things here in the last 2 weeks. Where are we? We're episode 9 now, I think. Yes, episode 9. So in the first 8 weeks, we've done a lot of different great stuff. And we got the full-length characters, and this is the first female that we've done. So you can see here on the screen next to me how far we got with Lady Sif. And just before we get to that, I'd just like to check in to see if any of you were here for Late Night Art Attack very, very early this morning. It screens at 1 a.m. on a Saturday morning till 3 a.m. your time. But for me, I'm here in Singapore. So it's at 1 p.m. for me. But I was at a show earlier today and I couldn't make it. So we did a pre-recording of Late Night Art Attack because I was otherwise engaged. And if you weren't here for Late Night Art Attack, let me just give you a quick recap of what me and my partner in crime, Raul, did earlier today. This is what happened in Late Night Art Attack very early.
Previously on Late Night Art Attack.
So you see there in the upper corner, it said the Mad Lads Halloween Special. So that's what we pre-recorded. And you can see I've still got my Mad Lads Halloween Special carry on there. And I'll just show you where I was actually earlier today. Where I was, in fact, was here at the Singapore Games Fest. There was a fireside chat. And I was here with some other celebrities from the region talking about careers in this kind of work. They were mainly into gaming. And they brought me in because comics and that kind of stuff is pretty niche as well. So I was there talking all about comics and the things that you should look out for if you want to make a career in this kind of creative work. So that was all good fun. That was all very, very good fun indeed. So let's get back to our Lady Sif here. And last week, we got to inking. So let's have a quick recap. Let me put this full screen. You don't want to see me. I know as I said last week, I'm a rather handsome devil, some people have said. I'm not sure if they're actually taking the mick or being serious, but I digress. I'll take me out the screen and we're zooming on our Lady Sif to what we're going to ink. So very quick recap, another quick recap. We started out with a skeleton. And what I'd like to point out here is you notice that I treated her sword as part of the skeleton. Right from the outset. We want to know where our weaponry is, if our character has a prop, a weapon. Then we fleshed her out. And because I was doing this a bit like my tutorials that I do for my courses, I thought it would be nice to add in contours. And, oh, where's my contours gone? I tell a lie. I did not do my contours. I did, sorry, I did my costume. Yeah, we did detail. Sorry, I normally do something called contours, but I remember now to save time, I left that out. So we put in the detail. After the fresh shot, you put the basic detail of the form. Then we put in the costume. Then last with the penciling, we go to rendering. Now, if you've tuned in here before, you may have heard me say something commonly. Here it is. Always remember this. Keep those pencils light. Let me do that one more time. That's a bit quiet. Would you please turn that up? Keep those pencils light. Indeed, boys and girls. Keep your pencils light when you're sketching. No, I'm not really living by my mantra there, but that's because I want you to see what I'm doing. But when you're sketching, especially if traditional, keep your pencils light because you never know when something could go wrong. And you want to know how to correct those mistakes without damaging your paper. So I like to still urge people to keep pencils light. So now we get to inking. And speaking digitally, the first thing I do is the key lines, the outer edges of the costume. Now let me switch off my penciling. Now this is what I mean. These are the areas of the costume that change in color. So when it comes to coloring this, it's going to be a lot easier than if all of the detail was on one layer. So I have something called inking. That's one layer. Then I put in the detail. So you can see that's the foundation of the inking there. And now we're going to go for something called blacks. If you look at my layer palette over here where my mouse is, you'll see now I'm adding a layer called blacks. So let's switch back on rendering so we know what we're going to follow. And this is what we will now be inking today. So get your brushes, etc., pens at the ready, and let's ink Lady Sif. So what's my favorite tool? I'm using Clip Studio Paint. For those of you who tune in regularly, you know that. Of course, I spent most of my formative years. Who am I trying to kid? I'm way too old. During my formative years, there was no such thing as computer software for drawing. In my early years, let's say, I used to use Photoshop like everyone else. I still love my Photoshop. However, when it comes to doing comic-like work, Clip Studio is in a league of its own. And I see a lot of you out there are already using this software. So I like the feathering. Now we've got some Jack Kirby style rendering going on here. And it's not, I've got my stabilization turned up. Stabilization keeps your hand nice and steady. Now, I don't know how many of you out there have inked traditionally and digitally. You would have noticed that to keep a steady hand on a traditional piece of paper is in fact easier than when you're going digital. So I do urge you to use stabilization when you're going digital, because keeping a steady hand with a stylus is not the easiest thing in the world. Now, Photoshop, as far as I know, if I'm wrong, put a note in the comments. As far as I know, Photoshop does not have stabilization. It will get it eventually, I think. But at the moment, as far as I know, it doesn't have stabilization. So here, I'm doing the spotting, and you'll notice that the larger areas of black, I'm not actually filling with any ink. That's because I will later go through and I will paint bucket them in one go. If you're not familiar with digital art, paint bucketing is when you can drop a large amount of color in any given area. Put in some accents here on the sword. And when it comes to inking, an action that I very much like is anything that goes thick to thin. Thick to thin. Let's put some accents on these knuckles. I mentioned previously, I think it was last week I might have mentioned this, that Jack Kirby had his own unique way of drawing cloth, metallic cloth, I call it, the characters will look like if the costume is metallic, but it still has an air of cloth, of fabric about it. Truly unique to the man. That man was something else. Really was the king. And what I'm doing here is I'm putting in some texture that's going to try to emulate the great one. You got some very organic feathering here, but also there's bits looking rather metallic in the look of it. I don't know about you, but if you ever want to relax, there's nothing better than a bit of inking to relax. Well, I find digital inking quite relaxing. No, but I must confess, when I wasn't, dare I say, when I wasn't quite as good as I am now, assuming that I have got some sort of standard, it wasn't always this relaxing. But talk about relaxing, let's play some background music. Let's set the mood. No, it's 6 p.m. where you are, but it's 6 a.m. where I am. There we are. I showed you earlier that I was at the Games Fest Fireside Chat, a show here in Singapore. When I'm there again later today, and I'll be doing an art demo. This year is Singapore's 60th birthday. I think there in America, you got your 250th birthday coming up, I think, next year, right? Well, this year is Singapore's 60th birthday. So we all have to do an illustration representative of 60 years of Singapore. And for any of you out there who may be familiar with my work, I actually have a character named Singapore Sling. Her costume is based on the Singapore flag. So I will be drawing her amongst the Singapore SG60, they call it. The XG60 logo, I will include that into the piece of artwork of her when I'm doing my live art demo later on. If I've got any viewers here from Singapore, please do come down to Suntec City later on. It would be good to know that I have a viewer from this side. It's saying the pond. Does that make sense? There's a lot of ponds between us. I know the Americans say that between themselves and the UK. But between us and America, there's more than one pond, I dare say. You don't say. We're doing some big spotting here. I will fill that in, all those areas later, with the paint bucket. You may notice that I'm not following exactly what I penciled either. When you're inking yourself, of course you've got creative license. Now, if you're inking someone else, I wouldn't be so sure that you should do something too drastic. There have been some inkers in Western comics that were known to take a bit too much creative license, let's say. One of the most notorious of these characters was a great inker from a bygone era. He was around mainly during the 50s and 60s, I believe, and 70s. A man by the name of Vince Coletta. And he was very often accused of leaving out a lot of detail of artists, in particular, Jack Kirby himself. And I've seen some chronicles of this in a few books. And let's say he was a bit naughty. He was a bit naughty sometimes, in that he would cut corners, like leave out people in the background, props that he thought weren't exactly essential to the scene. Something that I often have to remind people, though, is that I'm not making excuses for any inker that is perhaps a bit lazy. This is not what I'm saying. But you got to remember that comics do work on deadlines. Now, I know some of you might say, well, look at some of those guys in the later years. They were missing deadlines all the time. Indeed, many of them were. But a lot of them suffered as a result. So, actually, something that I mentioned today during my fireside chat at that show, as mentioned earlier, was the beauty of comic art being trapped somewhere between fine art and commercial art. And this is why it gets our passions up so much, I believe. Because you've got the passion of fine art, but you need the practicality of commercial art. And this can cause a lot of problems amongst a lot of people, depending on, each person's proclivities, let's say. And I think our friend Vince Coletta, let's say, was quite pragmatic. He used to ink a lot of stuff. He used to work for a lot of artists simultaneously, I believe. So storytelling is the name of the game. If he neglected certain bits of detail, but the storytelling didn't really suffer as a result, I would say that creative license can be somewhat forgiven. But of course, you don't want to encourage too much omission of a penciler's hard work. Let's put some accents here in these fingers. Now, you probably see my computer stalled there momentarily. That's because Clip Studio Paint does momentary backups. So you often see it will pause momentarily. So if your computer ever has a fatal crash with Clip Studio Paint, you can go into the system folder and find older versions of the work, which has saved me to some degree in the past. And I'm feeling rather boastful at the moment because I sent my Mac for a hard disk upgrade this week. And for those of you who may have tuned in once before, you often hear me complaining about, oh, my computer's backing up or it's stalling. Well, as you saw just now, that stall didn't last very long. With my new upgrade, my iMac here is working very, very nicely. Very nicely indeed. Now, I don't want to talk too soon. I don't want to jinx it. I'm telling you, that stuff exists. Now, I spent many years in advertising and design, okay? And I can tell you, sometimes we'll be in the studio and a client decides to come into the studio to see their artwork being processed. And Murphy's Law, as they call it, it's a bad idea. When a client decides to come into the studio, the amount of times that the computers decided not to work properly. In fact, I went out to lunch once with a bunch of designers in the UK, and we were actually talking about this. I thought, maybe only I thought this, but no, I started speaking to a few other designers out there. We ended up talking about this. What is it, a phenomenon? I'm not sure. But Murphy's Law, man, that stuff is real. So here I am talking about how wonderful my computer is working at the moment. It's precisely at these times where anything can now go wrong. But don't be pessimistic, Jerome. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Now I'm going to put a slight shadow under this belt. As mentioned, you'll probably see I'm adding a bit of detail in areas where there's no penciling. And I've seen some pretty great inkers out there do something similar as well, because it's all about embellishing the artwork. I remember the first time I saw that word. I was very young, and it said embellisher. I used to call it embellisher. I didn't know what it was. I was a young kid. And embellishment. Again, that's Stan Lee's wordplay. I don't think anyone ever used that word apart from him. You know, he was paying great respect to the Incas. I often say this at the talks that I give, in fact, that Incas are not given the respect that they deserve. I can tell you from my experience of looking at other people's work, working with other people, there are some people who are born to ink. They're very natural at it. And there are some people who are absolutely fantastic artists, great pencilers, but their inking is absolutely dreadful. Now, I don't like to name drop or cause any controversy with naming such people, but because he's such an idol of mine, I feel safe in actually naming someone who fits that description of being a phenomenal artist, but a hopeless inker. There's a genius from America named Jim Starlin. And that man's penciling, but his drawing, affects me to this day. There's certain bits of anatomy that I draw that I confessed to a guy on Facebook the other day. My anatomy sometimes is not really based on reality. It's based on what Jim Starlin might have done. But one thing Jim Starlin cannot do is he cannot ink, man. I've seen some stuff from Jim Starlin that he's inked. Absolutely terrible. And it pains me to say that. But you know, the truth is the truth. The truth will set you free. But apart from that, that guy's, you know, he's a writer as well. And his ideas are just absolutely ridiculous. Off the scale, man, an absolute talent. Though again, he's a source of great pain for me. He did something years ago that he's got great accolades for. You know, it's listed as one of the greatest stories of all time, and he's very well renowned for something that he did, writing-wise, was he killed a character named Captain Marvel. Quite funny in that most people, they know Captain Marvel from the cinema, Brie Larson, the female. And of course, unless you're a comic book geek, you will have no idea that the original Captain Marvel, as in Marvel Comics is Captain Marvel, Shazam was also known as Captain Marvel back in the early days. Again, showing my age here. But so we're talking about Captain Marvel as in the Marvel from Marvel Comics, not DC, where Shazam comes from. Yes, the original Captain Marvel, or Marvel, of the Kree Empire. He was originally a man. And when I tell some of my students that, they don't believe me. So I have to show them pictures of the great Marvel. That man was phenomenal. Great character. Amazing concept. I'm surprised at how many people don't know the fundamental elevator pitch. You know what an elevator pitch is? It's when you describe something in a very, very brief way. So, I mean, one of the old stories is, imagine you've got a film producer captive in an elevator, and you've got his attention for a very limited amount of time. How are you going to pitch your concept to this person in the space of time of an elevator, of your typical elevator ride? And something that I like to cite to people is the elevator pitch of the original Captain Marvel. And for those of you who may not know, listen to this. Here's the elevator pitch that I always say to people of Captain Marvel. Okay, here goes. let me actually put some dramatics to this. Let me put my face on screen. Yeah. Here's the elevator pitch for Captain Marvel and why I think he's one of the greatest characters ever designed. Coming from a superior race of beings from another galaxy, Marvel comes to Earth on a precognitive mission to prepare it for conquership from his superior people, who are the Kree. But in coming here, he falls in love with Earth people and then becomes our greatest defender against his superior nation. Now that, you could say, is a little bit like Superman, but I think it's different enough to call it original, and I love that concept. And I think that Captain Marvel should have been more pivotal in the Marvel universe, but in his original state. But as I mentioned, Jim Starlin killed him in a very, very popular graphic novel called The Death of Captain Marvel. Now, it even sounds epic, right? I mean, it sounds fantastic. But I could never, ever forgive Jim Starlin for killing Captain Marvel. To me, it was a dark day indeed. In fact, I didn't know, because back in the late 1980s, I'd actually had a rest from collecting comics. I had a break. I didn't buy any Marvel comics between 1979, 1980, and the early 1990s. And what got me back was I went into a newsagents. That's a kind of shop in the UK that sells newspapers, and you get comic books off the shelf in those sort of shops. But like a shop that's like what you call in America a newsstand. So I went into this shop, not a comic collector. I've got my young family, the shop's across the road from my house. I've gone in there to buy some bread or something. And X-Men #1, the front cover by Jim Lee, was on the stand. And I took one look at that drawing, and I don't know, I picked it up, and then I started collecting again from there. Now remember, early 1990s, there is no internet. So I have no idea that Captain Marvel's dead. And when I eventually found out, I can't remember how I actually found out, but was I horrified? Very horrified indeed, that one of my favorite heroes was no longer with us. God, I sound like a geek. Anyone listening to this, right, would think I'm speaking about someone that actually lived. I know some of the conversations that I hear in comic shops sometimes, you would think these characters are actually living. But that's what we like about it, right? That's what we all love about fandom. That, unfortunately, Hollywood doesn't quite appreciate this aspect of it, I think. Yes, they're only creations, they're fictitious, but they do carry a kind of respect in love that's real. And the reason why Hollywood now is struggling so much with what we would call superhero movies is, I think they've disrespected the fans. And when you do that, it's very dangerous. People can lose. You can't fake this stuff. If you start doing things that it's not authentic, it's not from the heart, it's hard to explain. Everyone, even people who are not into comics, they can feel it. Something's not right. Something doesn't feel right. And very quickly, you can lose an audience. And I think a lot of the stuff from Hollywood was ticking certain political boxes that weren't actually true to the spirit of what it's all about. I'm inking this in a way that I don't always ink hair in this way. Now I'm working on a 24-inch Cintiq. Quite a luxury to have one of these, very much a luxury. And I think it's true to say that I'm able to do certain things with this that on a smaller tablet device, let's say you're just drawing on a tablet and not onto a screen, it's definitely more difficult when you're working on that kind of surface. I used tablets for many years. I still love normal tablets. I'm not talking about something like an iPad. I'm talking about any older artists out there will be more familiar with devices like Intuos from the Wacom company. And a lot of you also, I've seen quite a few of you using hardware from a company named Huion. Huion, new on the scene, very good, improving all the time. Now out here in Singapore, I'm a direct seller of Wacom. Way back in the day, way back. But you're talking about the late 2000s. We, from the Comic Association, I'm the president of the Association of Comic Artists Singapore. You might have saw that on the image that I showed you earlier from the Fireside Chat, the event that I was at. And when I first became the president of the association used to focus on publishing the work of its members, which was awesome. But it soon became apparent to me that Singapore is not a large country. It's an amazing country, but it does what I say, it punches above its weight. Sometimes people expect too much of Singapore. It's because it's got such a magnificent infrastructure. The levels of education here is very high. It's a very high performing country. Its GDP is incredible. And sometimes it gets a raw deal. People expect too much of it because it's so much excellence. There's so much excellence in other areas. And what people have to remember that it's still a small country. And when you've got not more than, I think it's about 5 million people, that's not a lot of people. And if you're expecting to have as many great artists as, say, some of the neighboring countries like Philippines and Indonesia, some great artists come from those countries, Malaysia, but they've also got millions more people. So a lot of people here are a bit worried that there's not enough quality comic artists, let's say. But I've never really thought that was a major problem. It's a small country. But nonetheless, you have to do something to help the situation. So very early on in my presidency, I decided to start conducting comic art classes that are still going now. I started those in 2008. And I still do that every Saturday morning and Wednesday evening. And back then, Wacom was not common. So they gave me a dealership in that I could resell the devices as well as demo for them. So all of the art shows in Singapore, we would go along, demo the Wacom devices, and we get a nice commission. And Huion, that I mentioned earlier, also came on the scene. But what I noticed very early on was that some of the newer players, there were different brands of pen tablets coming in. But what happened to a lot of them that I found was that they were unreliable. What would often happen is, let's say Windows computers have an update. Updates would come in for the system intermittently. I often found that some of the lesser brands outside of Wacom would have problems with updates. They would take weeks to catch up with an update, and this would cause a problem. Now, of course, if I'm selling these devices from the Comic Association of Singapore. I can't be doing things that are problematic. So I stopped demoing devices like Huion because they were a bit too troublesome. But all through the years, I've never found any problems like that with Wacom. And from what I can tell now, I think Huion no longer has those issues either. They've ironed out their back end. And I dare say, I think they're cheaper on average than Wacom devices. And I see a lot of you guys in America using them. And from what I can tell, they're doing a great job. I did have a Huion, and the action of it was fantastic. The touch sensitivity, etc., was spot on. But when those system updates came in, it did struggle a bit, let's say. But those are days in the past. No more. So here I am. I'm coming near to the end of inking this hair. Let's zoom out and see what's going on. This is what's going on, man. Okay. Oh, we've got a few people watching. Hello there. Oh, there's a few comments. Let's have a quick look. Let's see if anyone's actually read anything in. Who we got here? Wooden, thank you for your demonstrations. You're welcome, Wooden. Wooden seems to be a regular. I recognize that name. Wooden, where are you calling from? I think Woody's a regular here at the Madness Entertainment Group. You know, Madness Entertainment, right, put out a lot of great content. And I think he's a regular. Yeah, he knows the man himself, Pops here. What does he say here? Hi, Pops. I always know where to come back for some good stuff. Thanks a lot, Woody. Thanks a lot. And remember, draw streams all night tonight. We got Stephen B at 8 and Zafo is at 10. So keep it locked, people. Keep it locked, man. And sing that back, sing that channel. Nice one, Woody. There, indeed, Woody is one of us. Now, I'm not so familiar with Woody. The problem, you know, one of the biggest problems I have, right, is that I'm in such a different time zone to you guys that I know some of the guys from the Madness Entertainment Group. You know, some I'm very acquainted with. But there's some other shows that go out at times I just can't get near. I'm well asleep at that time. And I'm missing some great stuff, man. You know, I know that I'm missing some good stuff, but I'm gonna have to make more of an effort to get out there and get more acquainted with the Madverse at large. The Madverse at large, man. Putting some accents in her metallic feathers. Jack Kirby, man, his costume designs are absolutely ridiculous. He's always doing these things that are like, so him. There you can see from the sketch, I modified quite a lot on my inking. Some nice metal stuff going in here. Accent. I remember someone was talking about when a lot of Marvel IP got into Hollywood, they had to try and make some of Jack Kirby's costumes from what he'd drawn. And a lot of them were very difficult to, let's say, make in 3D. Because, you know, something that we do in comics is that we draw things just to suit ourselves. If you get to model some of the things that we draw, technically a lot of it's not possible. right? And apparently Jack Kirby was quite notorious for that, drawing things that when you try to make it in the 3D form, ain't gonna happen. But who cares? But one thing that I saw Hollywood do that I could not believe they got done to the level that they did was, I think it was the third Thor movie. There's a dark lady called Hela. And Hela has a ridiculous piece of headgear. And my word, the props department in that studio, they recreated Hela's headgear exactly verbatim of what Kirby had done. I couldn't believe it when it came on screen. She looked really, really good in that film. But I don't think it did that well financially for some reason. No, the next Thor film, Love and Thunder, I didn't watch that one because it seemed a bit frivolous. Like it was a bit too tongue-in-cheek for me. But Hela in Thor 3 was absolutely brilliant, I thought. She looked really good. Put some slight shading on this face, not too much. It's surprising, right? All of the ladies of comics have their lip gloss. And you wonder, a warrior from Asgard, where does she get time to put on makeup? Vanity, thy name is woman. But I don't like saying things like that. You know, when you try to make comics that come into the real world a bit too much. I mean, you know, I've seen the Avengers go into intergalactic battles that in real time must have lasted days, if not weeks. And not a person went to the toilet. Never saw them eat. You know, but you start asking these sort of questions, I think you destroy the lore. I find with comics, though, as time goes by, things do become more realistic. You know, if you look at the anatomies on some of the artists of today, the standard of drawing is way more accurate. I think a lot of artists are using more references as well. But the anatomical accuracy of a lot of the artists of today is very, very accurate. But that gives me a problem with a lot of comic art because it's too accurate. There are certain things that comic artists will do that is unique to them. It's their style that makes them, when you look at that drawing, it's the imperfections that gives it personality, let's say. You know, I still come from that era of appreciation. But I can also appreciate that maybe the modern era, people want things more photorealistic. It's just changing times, you could say. So you can see here, I'm doing the spotting, the paint bucketing that I mentioned earlier. I'm dropping in some blacks here. See, here's my rendering underneath. So I'm switching those off so it can render. I say all layers, so you can see this layer where my blacks are. See, my blacks to this. So I have to say all layers so it sees all of the other lines as well. You may notice little bits of black, little areas that are not being picked up. I'll be going at the end and touch those up. Some bits of black here in the hair. I will go in and touch those up after. Nothing much up there. Something down here in the cape. I'm going to go and render the legs after this. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Let's see how it's going so far. Okay, it's getting there. It's getting there. Save. Working digitally, you must save. Good. My computer has saved. Let's put back on our rendering. Let's see what else we need to ink. Got a bit of a cape here. Missing. Yeah. Look at that. Did you see that? My computer just did something very naughty. Look. See that? It's stalling. Now, what did I tell you? Look at that. It's stalling. Now, what is going on? See, I was talking so big about my upgrade, and look what's going on now. I'm telling you, mate, this stuff is real. Murphy's Law is real. It is not a conspiracy. Okay, let's see what's going on with this sword. With reflection. You notice that you can see some of the leg behind. Let me put the other construction on. That's called drawing through the object. It helps with accuracy. Put a bit of shadow here on that blade going down. Let's put in the shape of the knee. There. Calf area. Nice. As I mentioned, I'm using Clip Studio, and there's lots of different pens and brushes for you to choose from. And the one that I always use is called the mapping pen. It's the closest thing that I can get to like a brush, an expensive brush. I mentioned in the last show something called a sable paintbrush, very expensive, made of real horsehair. And that's what I used to use before I went almost entirely digital. And indeed, I remember trying so hard to ink like great people like Tom Palmer. I see these guys doing things, and my work was just nothing like this. And I thought, okay, I'm not as experienced as them. I've got to learn. But something just didn't look right. I just thought that something's not right here. I didn't know what was wrong, but I just knew something wasn't right. And then I was reading a book on inking. I think it was a book by Gary Martin. I get confused. Steve Root and Gary Martin. Okay, there's three guys. Steve Root, Gary Martin, and Mike Barron. They all worked on a story called Nexus, an independent comic. And I get confused between these guys, but I think Gary Martin was the inker, and he wrote a book about inking back in the 90s. And I bought that book, and it was a real eye-opener for me. And it was in that book that I discovered the paintbrushes I was using were simply substandard. Now, you've heard the old adage, a bad workman always blames his tools. I was very aware of that, don't get me wrong, right? Just because you go out and buy a new paintbrush doesn't mean that things are going to look correct. Excuse me. But I can tell you, after buying that paintbrush, the standard of my work was at a completely different level. And all those years of using cheap paintbrushes and not knowing that I was using the wrong tool actually stood me in good stead. Because if you're trying to get fantastic line work with a substandard tool, you're actually fine-tuning your skills to a point that you never would have done it if you had a decent paintbrush from day one. So some of the things that I was able to achieve with a really cheap paintbrush, I could quite safely say maybe other people couldn't have got that done. I spent years struggling with that stuff. I kid you not. But, interesting stuff. Okay, let's have a look at what spotting I might have missed there in there. This show is 1.5 hours long, so I started at 6. And it finishes at 7:30. How are we doing for time? Oh, we still got plenty of time. We're going to finish this inking, no problem. And why don't we get to a little bit of coloring if we have time? Yes, we can indeed do a bit of digital coloring. In fact, as I'm saying that, I'm convincing myself to do something a little bit interesting. What we could maybe explore is some very old school coloring in homage to the great Jack Kirby. How about that? Yeah, that sounds like it could be quite interesting. I'm actually recording the time lapse of this, and it usually makes the computer very slow. But I'm gonna say it again, with my recent upgrade, my computer is lightning quick. Very fast today. How lovely. They're just filling me through the blacks here. Let's put in a bit. There should be a shadow under this piece of hair. I'm not really working with a light source as such here, yeah? But remember, if you're not really working with a light source, you should default to if the light was coming from above. I don't like that. Right? What I mean by that is, generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, there's something unique is going on. Your light source will be coming from above. It's normally the sun is above our head, or there's a light bulb in the ceiling and the light is coming from above. That is generally true. So, excuse me. My default light source, you could say, is from above. And I would go as far as to say that should be the same for every man, woman, and child. Now I'm going to put a little bit of spotting there, as I did on the bell. Excuse me. What's wrong with me? And I'm going to put in, whoops, look at that. Concentrate, boy. How can I forget the shadow under the chin, especially after going on about light sources coming from above? And what is going on, man? Let's zoom out and see how things are looking. Control X. Save. Let me just check on the Wooden says, I've been following Pops for 5 or 8 years. Good man with him, good man. What is it? Hella's headgear? Yeah, do you remember that? There's no kinks movement going on. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, no kinks. There's no kinks going on. What is it? I like these anatomies. Thanks, William. It's all creative license. My anatomies just follow a vibe. What he says here? How can we incels imagine breasts when we have never seen one? Not to mention 2 at a time. Speak for yourself, William. I've been married twice, mate. In fact, it was women that caused me to stop collecting comments in the first place. I realized that girls didn't like comic book geeks. We're cool now, but back in the 1980s, it was a turnoff. And I dropped the comics and started chasing skirt. The worst thing I ever did. It was when I was a crazy, clueless liberal. This is a bit of a cave. When your computer is stalling, it is trying to tell you something. Yes. Well, then it was telling me that I didn't have enough memory and that my hard disk was too old. I take it to the guy in the shop and I say, my computer's taking rather long to do certain things. And he takes it from me and he calls me back within half an hour. He goes, your hard disk is shot. So he soon remedied that. Mate. It's been lightning quick. I've been feeling like a star all week. Been feeling like a star. Now Woody, good man, he seems to I say this every week. If you can't understand what I'm saying because I'm talking too fast, please do let me know. Because my parents were from Barbados in the Caribbean. I was born in the UK. But one thing, if you go to the Caribbean, if you go to Barbados, you will notice that people have a tendency to speak very quickly. And I picked that up from my mother in particular. And I must remember to slow down. Slow down, boy. I don't always do that. But I've been practicing. I've been trying to slow down. And people, no one's actually complained yet, but maybe they're just being polite. What's he talking about? Oh yeah, and I've also got an English accent, of course. And I've been in Singapore for 30 years. And even sometimes I speak with a bit of Singapore phonics, which could also exacerbate the problems. I think the last bits of spotting to go in here. Then we're done with that. We could do some coloring. How about that? Okay, so there's Lady Sif. Inked and rendered. I'm gonna save. So I'm gonna zoom in so you can see closely. There's the feet. Coming up to the legs, the beginning of the sword. The lower right of the cape, lower left of the cape, coming up, hand. No, I'm not convinced by this. I'm not going to render those knuckles like that. I'm going to tell you why. I'm being a naughty boy. If the light source is coming from above, that accent should be over here. Who agrees with me? If you don't agree with me, leave a comment. Saying, Jerome, you're talking nonsense. It's got nothing to do with it. Good. I'm going to put a bit of a shadow just in that underside of the skirt. So we continue scrolling. There's a lower torso, the mid torso. Here's the chest area that Woodham swears he has no experience of in the flesh, so to speak. That's all I'm going to say. Is this is a family-friendly show? I'm not going any further with his comments. Let me scroll up to the head. I think we've got a bit of rendering missing here. And there we have the hair and the headgear. I don't like the fact that there's no space for the accent there. That's important. And this does not look smooth enough there. That'll do for that. Good. Let's put some color in. So let's have a look at my coloring techniques. Now the first thing with Lady Sif is she has a predominantly white outfit. It's like white metallic. Unique, truly unique. So what I'm going to do is put in here base white. And I go into my color palette, to my layer palette, and I'm actually going to make this color slightly off-white. Now, because she is almost all white, what I can do is this. I'm going to get the magic wand. I'm going to tell the magic wand, which selects areas, to refer to all layers. So now when I click, can you see the marching ants? Let me zoom in. Let me zoom right in. Tight like a tiger. Can you see on the screen? You can't see it. I'm looking at what you're looking at, and it doesn't show the marching ants. Okay, what's happened is, the outside of Lady Sif, I got into Star Wars mode. Not Lady Sif, Lady Sif. No, you can't see it. It's not showing you the active marching ants pattern. No, you can't see that, can you? Oh, very slightly you can see it. What's happened is, I've selected all of the outside of Lady Sif. Now I'm going to go Command Shift I. That means invert. If you're using Photoshop, it's the same. If you're using a PC, it is Alt Shift I. So I'm now going to fill this with a very, very pale white. See, there's a white gone into the whole character. Because she's almost all white, I might as well fill the whole thing with white first. So now this is where we switch off our blacks and our detail. Let's just get our boundary areas active. So now I'm going to press Command D for deselect. Now look, one thing I've done wrong here. You want to bound off your areas. So when I did my original inking, the detail layer, can you see here, what I should have done was I needed to actually also put a small line here so that when I come to do my coloring, it will not run out of this zone. If you're new to digital coloring, this might be a bit confusing, but if you stick with me through these Saturday draw-alongs, you will eventually get the hang of this. So now I'll switch off my detail again. I just knocked it back in opacity so you can see what I was doing. So I'm going to switch that off. Now we have all of the boundary areas where we can just paint bucket color. So Lady Sif, her costume has burgundy. Now, I have a reference of it here somewhere. Let me just call up my reference. My reference is, let me just have a quick refresher. See here, I put it in view for you to see what I'm looking at. There's no secrets between us. We're all friends here. We've been through a lot together. So I will share. Right, here are my references for Lady Sif. So can you see she's got burgundy? It's like a pink, no, magenta. We're talking about burgundy, for goodness sake, boy. She's got magenta parts in her costume. You see that, right? Good. So let's move my references over to my other screen. So here, I would either call it decor or magenta. And I actually make these parts of my layers. You see my layer? I actually make it that color. Now Photoshop, as far as I know, can't do that. You can have different color layers, but they select. The colors are already there. I think Photoshop has these basic colors, as you can see here, for layer color. But Clip Studio allows you to customize it. Now, the last time I bought Photoshop was quite some time ago. I use an old copy just for my graphic design mainly. If they have since upgraded that or made that change to the software, do let me know. So here's my magenta, not too saturated. Yee, look at that. I saw this in my time lapse. I did not remove this piece of line here. What kind of teaching is this? So we've got the magenta there. We've put the magenta in her belt. Would help if I had the right tool. Uh-oh, my computer's messing about. Look at that, it won't let me get the paint bucket. Would you believe that? Hang on, let's see if this, okay, this tool works. My pen is working. Paint bucket boy. My tool is switching by itself. Now I'm getting nervous now. I thought so big about my computer. This is now when it's going to start to mess around. It serves me right. Let's have a look. Her gauntlets appear to be magenta. Her choker. This part is magenta. And the crown on the top. The feathers are metallic white. Nice. These bits of trimming on the legs are magenta. Now, let me just check my reference. I think her boots are magenta as well. Yeah, boy. Hey, I forgot some detail. She's got some contours on her boots. I didn't notice that before. Oh, because that other reference didn't have it. Never mind. We'll keep the simple boots then. And the hilt of her sword is also magenta. No, that color doesn't, I'm not convinced by that color, you know. It's not pink enough. It's not pink enough. No, it can't be too saturated because I'm going to color this using a certain technique that I want to share with you, which is really useful. I'm going to select all that color. You press Command, and the thumbnail in the layers palette selects all of that color. Then you hit Option, Backspace, or Delete. And you can change all of that color at once. Good. Now, Lady Sif has black hair. In comic world, that's navy blue. So I actually call this hair. I'm just going to put in blue. Let's get an unsaturated, nice blue for the hair. All of my colors are on separate layers, okay? Just drop that in. And you can see, because hair is very fine, those little bits that go into where the hair comes to a fine point, often it's not picked up with a magic wand or a paint bucket. So you must go in after and fill those in. Now, I've noticed when I watch back some of my time lapses, I'm so busy talking and doing tomfoolery that there are very simple things that I miss. And I'm sure that you guys at home watching are saying, hey, you missed a bit. Indeed, I can see something that I've missed here. I missed, let me get my color back into the paint bucket. I missed the shoulder straps, didn't I? Yeah, of course, they're magenta. Okay, remember to always go to the right layer. In fact, I was so efficient then, I changed my layer and I didn't even realize that I did. I thought I was doing something wrong. Have more faith in yourself, boy. Good. So now, Lady Sif is of Norse mythology. So she's going to have a Caucasian skin color. So I'm often questioned about skin colors, right? So let's have a quick look at this. Generally speaking, if you're just coming out of the golden area of a color wheel, see here, look at where the color picker is, okay, here. If you're coming out of the golden area, almost going towards the orange, if you come to the pastel and light area of there, that will give you quite a lot of Asian skin tones. As you're near the oranges coming out of the gold, go to the darker areas, and this will give you skin tones nearer to black people. If you continue out of the orange and start getting nearer to the reds, come to the lighter pastel areas of that, and you'll get more of a Caucasian skin tone in that area. So I'm going to choose this one about here for the fresh color. Now I go for my actual color picker, and I'm going to copy that from my thumbnail. There it is, he's outside. Clip Studio Paint is very clever like that. It's got a few bits in it that are surprising. So we've got the fresh color in. Just do a bit of touching up, things that couldn't be caught in the nose there. Now we've got the white of the eyes. When I do white, I'm going to make this white. You probably saw her costume just now, it's literally white. But I'm putting a light blue tinge on it. Let's just see. Let me put that on the screen again for you to quickly see. Look here. Can you see that very old school drawing? They're accented the white with light blue. I still like that. I favor that. So I'm going to go for that with her costume, okay? Now, when we come to the whites of the face, for example, the whites of the eye, what I put in here is a light gray. I'm going to drop a light gray into the white areas of the eye. There. I have a secondary fresh color for the inner area of the eye, which if her mouth was open would be this color as well. So I call this fresh too. And it's a slightly darker fresh color. So somewhere around here is a slightly darker pink, and I put that on the inner eye. And if her mouth was open, I would put the inner mouth in this color as well. Now on that white layer, what I will do is the highlight of the eye, I will make an absolute white. There's no compromise on that one. So now we go to eyes. I was struggling to find a close-up of Lady Sif. Let's see what we got here. Let's look at this together. We're getting close here. Let's see if we can find a close-up of Lady Sif's face to see if we can see her eye color. You see, there's nothing there. Nothing there. I mean, she's got dark hair. So the chances of her having blue eyes is not high, but she's Nordic. You know, I'm going to give her brown eyes. Brown eyes, burning like fire. Let's give her some brown eyes. In fact, she reminds me a bit of something that I've been watching recently. You know, Hits TV. I think you have Hits Network in the US. I'm not sure where else in the world. We got it out here in Singapore, and it shows old TV shows. And I'm watching reruns of Xena, Warrior Princess. I used to love that show back in the 90s. She was the original girl boss. But the way she did it, you know, it wasn't overdone like perhaps it is today. And I've been binging on old Xena recently. And I didn't realize it back in the 90s, but she has extreme blue eyes. And when it comes to the lips, I'm actually going to go back to the magenta layer. And Vanity, Thy Name Is Woman, I reckon she would have her lip gloss matching her costume. Well, if she didn't, she hasn't in the Jack Kirby comics, but I'm taking creative license and I'm going to do that. How about that? So there, our base colors are in. Let me just check to make sure this no one's come up with any text. Okay, William said the calf area is nice. William, I'm not trusting you, William. First of all, you were talking about breasts, and now you're talking about calves. There's something we're looking at a woman's calves that I think is a bit dodgy, mate. We'll discuss that later, off the air. What's this? We just got raided on Pill by Harley Quinn 369. I'm not even going to begin to guess what that means. I'm going to have to find out. Okay, Grey Wolf says, hiya chat. Was it Grey Wolf? Yeah, I got 15 minutes left. What is the coloring? This is amazing. You're welcome, Winnie. This is because Norse mythology, women always have blue hair. I don't believe that. The women with blue hair nowadays certainly aren't Norse. Edwin's in the house. Looking good, homie. What's up, Edwin? Edwin, if any of you regulars know Edwin is a star of the Madness Entertainment Group. And he dropped in last week to our late night art attack, which was great fun. You drew an amazing Hulk. Edwin is indeed the man. Okay, so yeah, we got 12 minutes here. And I reckon I can do some shading here. Now, a technique that I use is called dodge and burn. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I don't actually see a lot of people talking about this on the net. I'm not sure why that is. I don't believe that I'm that clever. But why this isn't more common, maybe it is more common than I know, but I just don't see anyone talking about it. I mentioned before that comic art is emergence of fine art and commercial art, which means you've got to try and do things quickly. Now let me show you something about dodge and burn that is very unique. The first thing I do is, you see my white layer here, which I call blue, right? I spelled it wrong just now. What a retard. I duplicate it. So my flat color, I have a flat color, and I have another layer that I call FX, as in special effects. There's going to be blue, white effects. And the first thing I do is I do my shadows. Now let me show you how dodge and burn works, right? You get the spray can. I go for soft. Here in the tool property, you go for color burn. Now, the burn makes things darker, and you can choose from anywhere in the spectrum how you're going to affect that color. So for example, if I put my color picker down in the black, let's put my brush density up to 100. This is maximum. Look at what it does to the blue. It makes the blue very, very dark. If I take that and I push that right into the magenta, it brings in a dark magenta. Now, in between here, you got all the nuances. I'm going to take my density down to 20. And I want a rustic dark blue to affect my blue. So I'm going to put my color picker here and I'm going to put the dial in the blue and the color picker here, and my density is lower. Now I only want her chest area. So I'm going to magic wand. I'm going to switch off my detail. Sorry, not detail. I'm going to switch off my blacks and I'm going to select this area. So not only her chest area it's going to be affected by my burning. Now I'm going to switch the blacks on so I can see how to gauge my shading. So with a density of only 20, so it's not too dark, I'm going to put a shadow underneath her chest. There's a rough shadow going in there. Now, let me see if you can see this. I'm going to give it another pass. Now, can you see that shadow going in there? It's very blue. Okay, I'm going to put a shadow on the upper abs. I'm going to put an accent in this crease. Smaller brush now. Notice just now I had a big brush, right? Smaller brush here. Put in these accents. I'm going to put a bit of a shadow in her lower abdomen here as it goes behind the belt. Can you see that shadow? It depends on how sensitive your screen is. I think you can see that. I'm going to put a bit of shadow under the hair. Falls onto the shoulder. Whoops, I didn't select this piece of shoulder over here. I'm going to hold shift and now I'm going to select this area as well. I need to add a bit there. See that? I didn't select that. So I've got the lasso tool and I added that bit of extra shoulder. And I want to shade just over there slightly as well. Nice. There's a first shadow that we're putting in. I want to do the arm area. So I don't want the chest to be affected. So I'm going to magic wand only the arms. Switch back on my blacks. And I want a shadow in the inner arm. There. Big brush. So we get a big feathering. It didn't select. See that bit that wasn't selected there? Got to pay attention. Pay attention, boy. Got 7 minutes left. Let's see how much more we can get done. We will continue with this next week. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to put in a few accents here on these folds. How lovely. Bit of a shadow here. Bit on the folds. Now her hands. Ooh. See what I was talking about? Being very neglectful. I forgot the flesh on her hands. Somebody fire that man. Okay, let me switch off the blacks. Let me put a base color quickly in the hands. There. And again, I'm going to give her matching nail polish on the magenta layer. How about that? Never mess with a woman's pedicure. Yee, look at that inking. God damn, Jerry Hinds. Let's clean that up slightly. Okay, good. That was soon remedied. Now you can see here. Can you see? When you switch the shading off, you should have the remnants of a painting. You can see the shadows beginning to go into the body. This is how you can judge if your coloring is on track. So let's go back to our coloring. And I want to do, the cape. Let's just do, we've got 5 minutes left. Let's just do some of her body. And we leave the cape until next week. Right, so I'm going to highlight. I don't want the shading to go into the cape. So I've got to highlight the legs and the skirt separately. You can't see the marching ants, but I've magic wand. I've magic wanded. Is that a word? I've magic wanded the skirt, and the legs. So now, when I burn, it's only going to affect those areas. I'm going to put a slight accent under the belt. So the creases in the skirt. But a bit of shadow here as the leg is raised. This is falling into the darkness. There, we have a shadow under there on the inner leg. We shade the inner legs. A bit dark as it comes from under the skirt. Outer leg here is this falls away from the above light. This back foot, this is pretty much more in the shadows. So we're going to make this darker. Smaller brush. We don't want to go into the other calf too much. Then here, we put a shadow under the knee. Bit for the calf muscles here. Lower thigh here, this is going away from us. Now, can you see that on your monitors? And a little bit there on the upper leg. Good. So we started putting in the shading to our coloring with burn. You see that? I've got the color picker right in the middle of the color dial, a blue zone, and that's giving me this hue of blue, which this is a white costume, but I want to give it an air of blue over it. We're going to put the highlights in last, but we always start with the shadows. So we've got 3 minutes left. I'm going to run a couple of trailers before we get the outro. So let me just give you a quick look at what we've done. So zoom in, deselect. Zoom in, there's base colors to lower form and the face. And we've got all the base colors in for all her makeup and everything. We will put some blush on her, but that comes at the end. So I hope some of you out there were drawing along with me. And we will complete Lady Sif next week. Let's bring me back into the picture. Who's that handsome man? Here I am once again. Thanks once again for tuning in. My name is Jerry Hinds. This was Supa-Saturday's Draw Along. We will continue with the Lady Sif next week. If you've got any questions, please do leave some in the comments. And it's been great fun once again. It's 7:30 a.m. here in Singapore. So I'm still waking up, to be honest. It's amazing. My wife always says that I'm very much a morning person. I'm a morning person. I'm very noisy in the morning. So that's why I suggested, when to do this show, I suggested to the boss man himself, an early morning show shouldn't be a problem for me because I'm quite a morning person. But yeah, it's been great fun doing this. Just last few comments. Edwin says, love that underfoot shadow. Thanks, Edwin. I think I look at your coloring. I know that you get what I'm doing there. I know you get it. I know you get it, sir. You can find me on all social media, okay, at Jerome Hinds Art. And I'll be here again next week, same time. Remember, before that, at 1 a.m. is Late Night Art Attack with Raoul. And indeed, sometimes Edwin drops by. And Chris has not been with us for a few weeks, but I think he's going to be back soon. It might be next week. We have to wait and see. And I'll be back here again, same time again next week. Meanwhile, have a great weekend. Enjoy your Sunday ahead. And it's out for me, Jerry Hinds. I'm going to run a trailer and then the end credits. Peace.
If you like stories about truth, honor, and justice, then you should check out MAGA Man. It is Donald Trump as many now see him, the defender of justice and a warrior for peace through strength. MAGA Man is an all-American style 22-page comic book, so get over to fundmycomic.com and support the culture of truth, honor, and justice. With MAGA Man, the most needed hero of all. MAGA Man.
Supa-Saturdays. Supa-Saturdays.
live viewing of any Madness Entertainment Group production, you can find all our content on Roku or as a member of this channel. We'll see you next time on the Madness Entertainment